Okay, so I am here with Mehdi Taileb from Liberty Info. I'm probably pronouncing it really wrong. I may let
No,
him pronounce it
okay,
himself.
perfect.
Mehdi, welcome to the stream. I know you
Thank
have been
you.
a very long time and very vociferous supporter of both Julian Assange and of WikiLeaks, and I'd love for you to open by telling us a bit about yourself and a bit about your journey and what attracted you to WikiLeaks.
Yeah, thank you, Susie. First of all, thank you for having me here, and thanks also to your colleagues who are working behind the curtains. I, uh, um, I know how hard it is to organize such an event. So just to get the record straight, first, I'm not in France, but that's not very important. But still, I'm not in France right now. And second, I'm not a friend of Julian. I don't know him personally. So I'm just a long-time supporter, you could say, yes. But I don't know Julian personally.
I have seen your work shared by WikiLeaks over the years.
Oh, it's possible. Yeah, it's possible. Regarding the campaign, maybe that we ran with the Liberty Info. Yeah, it's possible. But I don't know Julian really personally at all. Yeah, when did this journey start? Well, it started in I think around September 2010 when I saw in the in a newspaper or an online article rather that there was an arrest warrant for this guy who was the founder and editor of this organization, which had a funny name, WikiLeaks, which published very annoying things for the U.S. And suddenly he was subject to these rape accusations, and he had an arrest warrant against him, an Interpol red notice against him. So this is usually reserved for like very high level criminals, like drug lords and serial killers and things like that. So that was really weird, to say the least. So I smelled something fishy in there, and I was a little bit shocked, because actually the WikiLeaks revelations, was it collateral murder or the Iraq war logs or Afghan war diaries, weren't really surprising to me because I grew up in a former French colony, Algeria, and I know full well how the empire works. Any empire, they all work the same way. And the US empire has learned actually from the French empire at some point. I think it was before the Americans succeeded to the French in Vietnam. Actually, the French taught, you should say, somehow taught the French how to deal with the rebellion, with firefighters, but they were calling them rebellion and terrorists and so on. So I wasn't surprised by all the WikiLeaks revelations, really. So I was like, oh yeah, okay, big news for me. Maybe it's big news for some people, but not for me, right? But when I saw that there was this arrest warrant and this persecution of Julian, actually, so there was a you could say a switch that flipped in my head. I understood there was something very important happening at that precise time, because you had this organization revealing what was really going on the field, in these supposedly just wars that were supposed to export democracy as if it were some kind of commodity, right? It's so ridiculous that so many people swallowed this story. Anyway, so you have this guy who revealed all these things, and it was very courageous, and he had brought first-hand evidence, source material. It wasn't hearsay. They were showing you the actual documents, the actual video. You could see it with your own eyes and make your own opinion and make your own judgment on what was really going on, right? So a switch flipped in my head, and I said, "Oh, okay, I should maybe follow this story a little bit closer than that." At that time, I was very busy with my job. I had a very busy job, I had very little time for anything. So so I actually decided, yeah, to dedicate a lot more time for that. And things escalated. There was suddenly threats to shut down WikiLeaks servers in France, for example. There was at that time it was the minister in charge of everything internet, digital affairs, who threatened the hosts of the WikiLeaks servers. It was a company called OVH. He threatened them to, he basically asked them to kick out WikiLeaks from their servers, right? Well, they did a good thing. This company, they fought back. They fought back against this pressure. It was a political pressure against them, right? But things escalated worldwide, not just in France or in the US, against Julian and against WikiLeaks. And at some point, because their servers were being constantly attacked, WikiLeaks asked people if they could set up their own servers at their homes, for example, to mirror the WikiLeaks servers. And the more mirrors you had, mirrors are copies of the servers, right? The more mirrors there were, and the more it was difficult for the attackers to shut down any WikiLeaks server, which consequently would make the data that was hosted by the WikiLeaks servers virtually uncensorable, right? So I said, okay, let's go. I'll set up my own server, and I did it, and I hosted a WikiLeaks mirror for several months until the following year. So yeah, so that's how little by little I got more and more involved, and at some point there was Anonymous, which was coming to the help of WikiLeaks, because another thing that WikiLeaks, another attack that WikiLeaks had was the target of. It was the financial blockade by Visa, MasterCard, and other financial companies, and PayPal. And Anonymous had targeted, I think, PayPal and other companies, but I think PayPal was targeted more than the other ones. But I thought, because Anonymous were presented in the media as this, a secret collective, and you don't know who it is, and they're hiding, and it's because it's illegal. I didn't like this narrative at all. I said, okay, there has to be some kind of fight, in the open, like officially. So I decided to set up this this nonprofit with a friend. It's called Liberty Info, and the goal of Liberty Info was to promote censored material like WikiLeaks's, and to also help and support in any way possible organizations like WikiLeaks or whistleblowers, like persons like Chelsea Manning and Rudolf Elmer. At some point, we ran a campaign for Rudolf Elmer, who still is a prominent whistleblower against banking secrecy in Switzerland, which is a big thing. That's how we created Liberty Info. So basically, it's a grassroots nonprofit where people can join specific campaigns that they choose, and everyone has some kind of talent and can contribute, participate. We had many artists, for example, who did fantastic things with regard to WikiLeaks and Julian. And it's quite effective in terms of communication. The goal during the first the first 3 years, meaning between early 2011 and early 2014 or late 2013, the goal of Liberty Info was mainly to do counter propaganda. Counter propaganda, because as you know full well, there was all the mass media, almost without exception, one exception being RT, but all the rest, they were constantly attacking WikiLeaks with lies, slander, libel. Oh, Assange is charged with rape. No, he's not charged. These are just allegations, you know. And there was a file open, which was closed by one prosecutor and then opened by another. So there was lots of strange things happening there too in Sweden. So these were just allegations, but in the media, they were saying charges, rape charges against Julian Assange. So they did this for years, you know. And unfortunately, most of the people, you know, they don't. Somebody was talking about that a few hours ago on Vigil. People don't make the effort to look for truth. You know, they tend to believe mass media because it's the easiest thing to do. Right? You don't have to do any effort because, yeah, you need time and energy to verify information, right? So that was a huge problem. So basically, yeah, that's what we did for the first 3 years. Heavy counter propaganda. It's very exhausting mentally because you're like a very small organization, along with individuals or other small organizations against the media, the establishment, mass media, right? And also there were the politicians almost everywhere who were repeating the same thing as the media. The exception being Rafael Correa, the former Ecuadorian president, and now as you can see, there's an arrest warrant against him too. It's like the same story that happened to Julian. They're trying to extradite him from Belgium, where he lives because his wife is Belgian, and he ran away to Ecuador after Lenin Moreno got elected, and he figured out that Lenin Moreno, the new president, is a traitor. So Rafael Correa smelled.
So do you think? Sorry to interrupt you, Mehdi.
Yeah,
I'm wondering, like, what is the motivation for this? Do you think that they are wanting to make an example out of Korea to other world leaders to say this is what will happen if you shelter, you know, a dissident who threatens Western elites?
Yes, I think so, absolutely, because there's no other reason for this to happen, for this witch hunt to happen against Korea, because he's not the president anymore. He doesn't have any power. You know, he couldn't harm them in the future. So the only reason for them to do that is, to set a good example with him, because he really stood up to the U.S. empire, and the U.S. empire doesn't like that. You know, they don't like that. So he stood up to them, for example, when he fought the Ecuadorian oligarchs, which are backed by the U.S. government, naturally, because the U.S. government wants liberal internationalism, like Julian calls it in his book, The WikiLeaks Files. They want people who implement neoliberal policies in those countries. So it's a new form of colonization, but not with boots on the ground. It's with, you know, oligarchs and politicians who are in your pocket, who implement policies that allow you as the U.S. empire to promote your own companies and to have quasi-monopoly of those markets. So yeah, basically my answer, I think yes, it's to set an example of, yeah.
Mehdi, the reason I was particularly interested in France, I have a personal reason and also a more journalistic reason. My personal reason is because it was revealed that there were dispatch orders from the CIA to New Zealand and to the Five Eyes countries, dispatching our human intelligence spies to infiltrate and spy on all of the parties in the recent French election. Are you aware of that release?
In the latest French election, the presidential election?
Correct.
Last year.
Yeah, circa the Macron leaks. And I found that to be incredibly fascinating when that document came out, because not only did it prove the subservience of the Five Eyes partners and actually allowing the US to dispatch spies that are supposed to serve our interests from our countries are being dispatched to serve the US interests, but also because that was a piece of hard evidence that does not exist in Russiagate. Like, imagine if they actually had a document from Putin, FSB or whatever, dispatching, proving that they dispatched spies, of these partner countries to infiltrate wherever, France, Germany, or US election. This is hard. It's hard, undeniable evidence of tampering in the democratic process of, in fact, in the case of France, what is supposed to be an allied country to the US. And yet this document has just flown completely under the radar. None of the media report on it. I mean, heads should have been rolling over it, and yet it's completely ignored.
Well, it's because the empire always, the empire sticks with the empire, and intelligence agencies are there theoretically to serve the people, but I don't believe in that at all. I think it's been a long time. Since a long time ago, they haven't been serving their people; they've been serving themselves. And yeah, I mean, these intelligence agencies of the Five Eyes, but even beyond that, they are objective allies. They work with the same methods. They know each other. They attend the same conferences. They sometimes have the same assets. So, of course they work together. You're kidding? What's the interest for them to work for the people, especially if there's no accountability? And by the way, there was Annie Michon and somebody else.
Her partner, David. Are you talking about Annie and her partner?
MI5. Yeah, she had confirmed that that MI6 in her case, in the case of Britain, MI6 wasn't accountable. And somebody else was speaking about the U.S. intelligence agency that they were not accountable at all. So when you're an intelligence agency and you're not accountable at all, of course you're going to work together with other intelligence agencies. It's a natural thing.
Oh, that reminds me of one of the documents that we read in the Snowden files, actually, where an NSA executive is talking about what the characteristics of a good NSA executive are, and the characteristics that you need to succeed within the organization. And he says that you need to have an amnesiac attitude towards past failures.
Exactly.
They actually state that you need to be able to ignore the things that went wrong.
Yeah, I mean, this means they're looking for people who never ask questions. They just execute, even if something failed miserably in the past. If you get the same order again, and it will fail miserably, you will not ask the question again. But as long as they will need humans to perform their main tasks, they will have whistleblowers. But the problem is, the day they will not need humans, they will just need programs, artificial intelligence programs, which will probably not ask questions, right? That's what worries me more, because as long as they need to rely on humans, I don't think they like it, because humans are unpredictable.
They present a liability.
Oh, a lot, yes. So I don't know what the future holds, but it's a competition, it's a race.
So from your perspective, what was the most significant, and not to weigh them up against each other, but was there a really significant release to you personally by WikiLeaks?
For me personally, well, I have learned a lot about international relations thanks to Cablegate. So I really like that one. I think Vault 7 was very interesting. Mainly, one aspect that personally I find very interesting is that the CIA actually misplaced its cyber weapons arsenal. They lost it. Well, they didn't lose it. They lost a copy of it. So they still have a copy, but they lost the most dangerous cyber arsenal in the whole history. And this is, well, it's a big thing in itself, but it also, I think, reveals that these bureaucracies like the CIA, the NSA, they may have billions and billions of dollars of budget, but they are just organizations, and big ones, large ones, and there's a huge bureaucracy. And when there's so much entropy in the system, you will have problems. You will lose misplaced stuff. You will have whistleblowers. You will make huge mistakes, meaning things against your own goals. So, yeah, for me, I would say Cablegate and Vault 7.
So maybe perhaps that's one of the greatest lessons of WikiLeaks, is that it shows that these agencies are not invincible. These agencies, they posture themselves as being all powerful, omnipotent, you know, petrifying people into submission.
Exactly.
But in fact,
it's a war. In a war, when you're weak, you pretend to be strong, and when you're strong, you pretend to be weak. That's how it works. And it's a war, actually, that we're waging against those people, and they're waging it against us, meaning the people who resist, but also the people who don't resist. They just don't want to see this reality. They don't want to admit this reality, but
yeah, they're always forced to deal with it. I mean, those who put their heads in the sand and say, I don't want to be a part of this, you know, I just want to live my life peacefully, they're still subject to the changing world around them, and they are still affected by the net result of their own inaction.
Yeah, but it's a human bias, you know, to tend to ignore bad news and focus on the good things and hope for the best and be optimistic. You know, that's what allowed us probably to survive for millions of years and as a species, to be constantly optimistic. But that's a huge problem in this case, clearly.
There was a quote from Julian on WikiLeaks timeline today where he said, you know, he was asked what disappointed him the most, and he said what had disappointed him personally was learning that very, very intelligent people could still lack courage.
Exactly.
That there was no correlation between courage and intelligence.
Yeah, there is no correlation. Well, we all know examples around us. We don't need to see statistical studies, large statistical studies to know that. Unfortunately, not too long ago, horrible things happened in Europe, which has been the main area for the most horrible things in history. But see, people don't seem to have learned anything from it, because what I think personally is that you know, I'm glad that there was this guy, the veteran guy, Sean, I think was his name, right?
Mm-hmm. Sean was mine.
Yeah, he mentioned Hannah Arendt and the banality of evil. Well, I would suggest people read Hannah Arendt's most famous book. That's the Origins of Totalitarianism, which describes pretty in detail how imperialism has bred actually fascism. So basically, if you let imperialism go wild, go unchecked, it will end up with fascism. And I think that's where we're going with U.S. imperialism and other former empires which are still trying to run as empires, meaning the French Empire, the British Empire. We can clearly see fascistic behaviors from the part of the elites there. So that's pretty much what's my view with regard to this. Yeah. So I think people who do nothing, it will end up with fascism, basically, like history shows again and again.
certainly the mechanisms of control that they've set up are definitely fascistic in nature, be it the surveillance or the military, as Chris was just talking about, the militarization of the domestic police forces within America, and increasingly around the world. Even in New Zealand, our police force is being equipped with military-grade equipment.
Exactly.
And then there's the privatization aspect of it as well, the privatization of the police and the security services. And then, you know, the next generation weaponry that they are able to access as well. And we are seeing this across the world. And it just goes to show that it's not just about rhetoric. It's not just about immigration, pardon me, but there's actually, this agenda has been evolving over a number of years that predates Trump, as much as Trump may be escalating it.
Yeah, you know, there's this intellectual from the French Antilles, anti-imperialist, decolonial intellectual. His name was Aimé Césaire, and he used to say that if a civilization turns a blind eye on colonization, it will create its own Hitler, meaning its own punishment. You know, so I think that's what we're going again. You know, I hope I'm wrong. I hope I'll be wrong. I'll be proved wrong. But the tendency is clear. If you see things with some perspective and some, you know, like a bird's eye, a bird's view, you could see things. Yeah, the rise of fascistic behaviors, and yeah, like you said earlier, the militarization of the police, for example, the unchecked surveillance of the citizens, and how immigrants and refugees are treated. You know, fascism always starts with the weakest in society, and then it expands. And neoliberalism, for example, for me is just an expansion of this fascism to the middle classes, simply because it's tyranny.
Absolutely.
Tyranny.
And additionally, the persecution of the media is yet another element of that, and the persecution of Julian Assange. So I wrote a piece last year called "Understanding World War III," where I went back, gave the historical context in the lead up to World War II, and then in correlation to what we've seen of the wars of the last 15 years. And I learned about the poison kitchen, which was the name that Hitler gave the last pockets of resistance in the media sphere in Germany. And that was absolutely fascinating to see that there had been journalists who, right up until the very last minute in the lead up to World War II, had been openly screaming from the top of their lungs, trying to warn everybody about what was happening, telling them, this is the situation we are in, you must act, you must heed these warnings. And those journalists, sure enough, paid with their lives. They were killed, dragged off to concentration camps, shut down. Their offices and publishing organizations were ransacked and dismantled. But they had, for I think some 12 years in the lead up to Hitler's rise to power, consistently warned, this is what is happening to our society. Yeah. You must wake up. And it does feel very much like Julian and WikiLeaks have been that canary in the coal mine, are that canary in the coal mine.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I heard earlier, indeed, in the Vigil. It's a very good metaphor. Well, they are more than that, because I think Julian is very very smart guy, and anyone who has read any of his writings or has heard several of his interviews, he's a very smart guy. He understands lots of things, a lot more than the average people, and that's why he understood. Well, he according to his mother, he was always he always cared about justice, and you know, didn't tolerate injustice. And one way to smartly fight the many, if not most or all of them, sources of injustice in the world, which is really, it goes back to this question of the empire, this powerful US empire, and the smaller former empires which are more happy to cooperate with it most of the time.
The vassal states.
The vassal states, yeah, which work together against their own people, and I think we will see more and more of that in the very near future. Yeah, he understood that a smart way to fight all these humongous powers was to simply act as a catalyst between the people who had documents revealing how these empires work from the insiders, who were disgusted by what they saw with their own eyes, how this empire truly works. Of course, empires are based on lies. Back home, they tell you, "Oh, we are conducting." That's what they said every time in Vietnam, in Iraq, everywhere. "Oh, we are winning this war. Don't worry, it's going very well. We are democratizing it. It's happening very well. People are so happy. They love us, actually," and so on. And so this is the facade, and the reality is totally different. So these insiders, some of them are disgusted, like Snowden, like Chelsea Manning, like many others. So Julian had this brilliant idea to create this catalyst, which is WikiLeaks, which acts between these people who hold very, very valuable information about the real working of the empire and the general population. And the fact that you produce all this high-value information with a simple organization. Of course, it's not simple. WikiLeaks is not simple. It's based on high technology and so on. But it's relatively simple when you think about it, when you compare how much costed WikiLeaks compared to what it has revealed, the good it has created for the world. It was a very smart project of Assange. So that's why I say he's a very smart person. That's why he's so valuable for anyone who cares for justice in the world. That's why we need to support him. We need absolutely to help him. By the way, I have a message of support from one of Julian's also oldest, I would say, supporters, who is Meltem Arikan, who's also a friend of mine. I don't know if I could read it.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely, you can.
So yeah, Meltem Arikan has been supporting Julian and WikiLeaks for as long as I have, meaning since 2010. So her message is, as women and men entering the digital world with a chance to free ourselves from the chains of all ideologies and religions of the analog world, we demand both freedom of thought and freedom of expression for all. Without achieving these demands, it is not possible to demolish the tyrannical foundations of the analog world and start over with a truly free world. The West generally considers that issues relating to freedom are typically of the East and the South. This is wrong. Issues relating to freedom can be found across the board in the East, West, North, and South, especially when you enter the digital world. Western governments, just like their Eastern counterparts, are welcoming the technological changes of the digital world, but closing the door to the associated social and psychological freedoms. Cablegate showed us that there's a difference, often a contradiction, between the public stance and the private, real stance of many political figures. How can we then speak of democracy anywhere? Because WikiLeaks is the greatest force for bringing about these changes, everybody across the world should support Julian Assange. The Western persecution of Julian Assange and WikiLeaks has one name: witch hunt, and it has to stop. As a Turkish writer, I will always stand by Julian Assange and support WikiLeaks. Signed, Meltem Arikan. So that was a message of support from Meltem.
That is an absolutely incredible message, an incredible letter, and I would love to see it published somewhere.
Yeah, I think
yeah. So.
Publish it, sure. Yeah.
Brilliant. And being a Turkish writer, I mean.
Yeah, well, she was well, she was a little bit in a situation like Julian, because she had to flee Turkey in 2013 when they had the Gezi Park protests, you know. And she was like, well, she's just a writer and playwright. She's a brilliant one, but you know, and she was accused of being a terrorist and so many other things by the government, by the Turkish government, the Erdogan government. Yeah, she was seriously persecuted. She received death threats and other ugly things. So she had to flee Turkey. She found refuge in Wales, where she lives now. So she can relate with Julian on more than one aspect of life, I think.
WikiLeaks has gone out of their way, as you know, to support persecuted and at-risk journalists worldwide. Exactly. I know that Serena Shim said that Turkey was the world's largest prison camp for journalists, and then after she was killed in Turkey, it was referred to as the world's largest graveyard for journalists. And in fact, even a Kiwi journalist, a New Zealand journalist, last year was killed or died in extremely suspicious circumstances in Turkey as well.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. There was this. I think she was an American journalist. I think she was American Lebanese, and she died.
Serena Shim.
Right. Yeah, it was Serena Shim. Yes.
Correct.
All right.
Yeah, her mother is a close friend of mine and has been an amazing support to me. Right. Serena's story is absolutely remarkable. She was the first journalist to actually go into the refugee camps on the border to interview ISIS fighters, and then she was able to prove that UN World Food Organization trucks were being used to ship arms and supplies to ISIS across the Turkish border. And when she first covered that, 2010 through 2012, that was considered incredibly groundbreaking, controversial reporting. And she was subject to all kinds of reprisals as a result, and ultimately it cost her life. But in later years and more recent times, it has been what was so groundbreaking when she reported it has become established fact, which is that yes, those militants are in fact being supplied through Turkey.
Yeah. So these people who you know for them, protecting their lives is the most important thing. So they don't hesitate to kill people if it allows them to keep lying for 1 or 2 more years. So yeah, basically that's why WikiLeaks is so important, because it allows whistleblowers to bring out very valuable information, secret information, without being compromised. Because even WikiLeaks cannot know who you are. If you don't say who you are, of course. If you reveal, if you send documents to them, right? They will see the value of the documents based on their own merit, not based on who sent them, right? And unfortunately, even today, I meet journalists who still don't understand this. That you should check documents, the validity of the authenticity of a document based on its own merits, not based on who sent it to you. It seems to me the orthodoxy today in journalism schools, I don't know, but I'm just guessing, is to teach those students that if the government says something, then you can trust it fully. You know, if it's some kind of dissident, then you can throw it to the bin. Basically, that's why you were talking about that earlier in the Vigil. That's why, yeah, journalists are now stenographers for governments, and we are all seeing that. They copy-paste what the government tells them, and they publish that, and they call it a newspaper.
Mehdi, as we're coming to the close of the segment, I've been asking everybody, and so did Elizabeth, to give their message directly to Julian in the event that one day he is able to review the Vigil stream and to hear these messages from his supporters. So what is it, looking back over all the years that you've observed and learned from WikiLeaks, what is it that you would like to say to Julian right now?
Well, I have prepared some words for Julian.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah. I knew you would ask me this question. So I have prepared something for Julian. So first of all, I would like to tell him thank you. So I have a little message for him here. Thank you, Julian, for your courage and for revealing the truth, despite knowing full well the consequences. Like Jennifer Robinson, who was Julian's lawyer since 2010, since Cablegate and so on. She said recently that that actually Julian told her, we are about to reveal these documents, 250,000 documents of the U.S. diplomacy, and they're going to come after me, with full force. He told her that, so he knew what was coming on him, towards him. So he's not stupid. He knew what was going to happen. Although I don't think he thought it would be so difficult, but he knew full well it would be very hard. So first of all, Julian, thank you very much. And the second message, if I may, if I had a little bit more time. So keep fighting. Like he said to so many people, to so many dissidents who were persecuted. Julian has always prioritized other people before him, That's why it's very important for us to understand this and to understand that Julian will not defend Julian. Someone else needs to defend him, and that should be us, the supporters of Julian today. So keep fighting, and he has been fighting for 8 years now, and I think almost everyone knows now that he's been dealing with at least two, you could say, serious medical issues, because they have been creating chronic pain to him. That's first his right shoulder, and already two and a half years ago he couldn't even shake someone's hand because he couldn't move his arm. Right. So this is a serious issue. The other issue is a dental issue. He badly needed already in 2015. So this was almost 3 years ago. So already 3 years ago he needed dental treatment. So it's very urgent that he gets safe passage to get the health care he needs. And finally, this is not for Julian. This is more for Julian's supporters, such as myself. I think we need to step up the fight. And for doing that, I think it's important to promise to Julian's family that we will bring him home. So this final message is to Julian's family. We promise you to bring Julian home, because only us.
Mehdi, please raise it a little higher.
That's no problem.
A little bit higher, please, so we can see it all. Great. Oh, down a touch, halfway. Okay. There we go.
So we need to promise Julian's family, because it's not just himself. He has a family. He has children, and he needs to see them. They need to see him. It has been 8 years already, and I think if we, the supporters of WikiLeaks and Julian, we make this promise, and we do our best to keep our promise. We step our efforts, for example, by organizing protests, more massive protests and more sustained protests in front of the embassy, or if you're really too far, at another location which is highly symbolic. For example, a U.S. embassy, right? So that's what I think. And just to repeat a joke that has been said already, but maybe not everyone knows it. Do you know, Suzie, why the U.S. is the only place where you will not have a coup d'état?
Why is that?
Well, because it's the only place in the world where you don't have a U.S. embassy.
I remember the joke, but I can't remember now who it was.
It was from Evo Morales.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Suzie, for having me anyway. I hope it's a great initiative that you're organizing here with your colleagues. I'm sure it will allow everybody to organize better, to know each other, and to step up our efforts, because time, unfortunately, is working against us. It's working against Julian because of these medical issues. It can only get worse if he doesn't get his treatment, and it's been already years, almost 3 years, if not more, that he's been having this issue with the shoulder, serious one, and he needs dental surgery. He's been needing for 3 years now.
Very, very true. And I appreciate, you know, your thanks to me, but I'm very conscious of the fact that people are not here to see me. Chris Hedges did not come to see me. Chris Hedges came to support Julian. So did every other amazing person who's here. We are all here because of Julian and Julian's work, and because of WikiLeaks and the importance and the significance of it, and also because we care about human rights and we care about press freedom. And that is what has brought us all together. And that is why this is such an important movement, is to protect Julian, to protect human rights, and to protect press freedom. Thank you so much for being a part of it.
Thank you, Suzie, for having me, and thanks again to the whole team who is working in the background. They're doing a fantastic job regarding difficulties and so on. I know it's very difficult, and they're doing a fantastic job. I'd like to thank them.
The audience is thanking you as well at the moment. We have some really great people in chat. I'm very impressed by the comments that I've been seeing.
I'll look at that later. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you so much.